Live, Chair.
Thank you very much, Berna. Good afternoon and welcome to this South East Area Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday the 8th of July 2020. My name is Councillor Michael Helm and I'm Vice Chairman of this committee, deputising for the Chairman, Councillor Richard Dewick. This meeting is held under the new COVID regulations which came into effect on April the 4th in response to the COVID-19 situation. There are just a few housekeeping issues to run through, including our new working practices, which have been implemented due to the pandemic, and the etiquette for this meeting. First of all, please can I ask everyone present at this meeting to ensure their microphones remain muted and your video feed is off when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noises and avoid unintentional disturbances. This meeting will be hosted remotely via conferencing software, which allows members of the public to visually attend the meeting whilst being able to protect themselves and others and observe the government's lockdown measures. We will not encounter any glitches this afternoon, so I hope that everyone will bear with us as we get used to this new way of working. We are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers during each item, please use the chat function for the meeting to indicate you wish to speak. I will then invite you to at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating you wish to speak or you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purpose. Members, the process this afternoon will obviously be different, and by some items I may invite each member to speak in turn. Therefore, I encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible and not speak over each other. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number. Could I ensure that everybody is directly connected to the power supply so nobody drops out due to shortage of battery life? And last, if members need to leave the meeting at any point, please make this known and use the chat function to signify that you need to leave the meeting. Now may I ask the officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Lee.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Matthew Lee and I'm Lead Specialist Place here at Malden District Council. Thank you, Chairman.
Anybody else?
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm the Lead Specialist Development Management. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good afternoon. I'm Louise Staplehurst and I'm a specialist in development management.
Okay, thank you. Next one, please.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Annie Keane. I'm a senior caseworker at development management.
Thank you. And of course, Berna's here as well.
Oh, yes, good afternoon.
Berna, can you carry out a roll call of members to confirm who's in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I will call your names alphabetically, members. Councillor Bassinger.
Good afternoon, and I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Beale.
Present. Good afternoon, everybody.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Bell.
She sent apologies, Berna.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Present.
Councillor Channer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Helm is present.
Present.
Councillor Hull. Councillor Hull. I know she's present.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'm
Councillor.
here, President. Sorry, I didn't.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Present, Berna. Members, afternoon.
Thank you. Could those members in attendance please introduce themselves now? Thank you.
Councillor Carly Mays, Malden North.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome, Councillor Chrissy Morris.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. May I have the apologies for absence, please, Bernard?
We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Dewick and Councillor Bell.
Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of June. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June in 2020, found on pages 7 to 14, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now.
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Right. Declarations of interest. Disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests or other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, have regard to paragraph 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. If any member has any interest to declare, please use the chat function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak.
Chairman, Councillor Fluker and Councillor Channer would like to speak.
Okay. Who's first?
Councillor Fluker.
And Hull, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. With regards to agenda items 5, 9 and 10, I know the applicants. And now, hang on, I better start again. With regards to agenda items 5, 10 and 17, I know the applicants, non-pecuniary. And with regards to agenda item 9, pecuniary interest, Chairman, I won't be taking any part. My wife and I are actually the applicants. Thank you.
Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. Wish to declare non-pecuniary interest in that I'm also a member of Essex County Council, and of course that body is consulted on matters to do with highways, accesses and any other matters under their remit that they should be consulted on. I'll declare an interest on agenda item number 5. I know the applicant. And agenda item number 9, of course, I know Councillor Fluker. Well, he's Mr. Fluker putting the application in.
Anybody else?
Well,
Councillor Hull.
Councillor Hull.
A pecuniary interest in number 6. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A pecuniary interest in number 6 and a pecuniary interest in number 5, 9 and 10.
That non-pecuniary or pecuniary?
Non-pecuniary in 5, 9 and 10.
Okay.
A pecuniary for 6.
Okay. Will you be leaving the room then?
A pecuniary in number 6. I'll do.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, declare an
yes.
interest. Go on, carry on.
I mean, I think we all need to declare an interest that we know Councillor Fluker. So I guess we all have to declare that.
And Councillor White, I believe. Mrs. Patton is Councillor White.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, exactly.
Right. I wish to declare an interest in item 5. Councillor White is a fellow councillor. She lives in my ward, and she also lives in the farm that my grandfather owned when I was about 12. An interest in number 9, as Councillor Fluker is a fellow councillor, and Councillor 10, Councillor White is a fellow councillor. Anyone else?
Yes, hello, I do as well. I obviously know Councillor Fluker, and I know Councillor White, and I know Councillor Hull. So that's my non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Well,
Chairman, can we have that as everybody knows the councillors, or do we all have to say it?
No. We can take it as everybody knows.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Excellent.
Right. Okay. We move now to planning application 20-00345/FUL, land adjacent Orchard House, Snipsell's Chase, Mayland. In a moment, I will call on the officers to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Ms Staplehurst, please present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. The application seeks to vary Condition 2 and 8 of the previously approved permission for the change of use of land to equestrian and the construction of a building to be used for storage of agricultural machinery and the stabling of horses. Condition 2 relates to the approved plans and Condition 8 relates to details of foul drainage to be submitted to the Council. The amendments under this application are that the building will be 0.5 metres deeper and 2 metres wider and will have slightly smaller windows, and also no foul drainage is proposed. This is the location plan showing the site outlined in red. This shows the previously approved block plan and the building shown here, and here the building proposed under this application slightly larger. The previously approved floor plans and the proposed floor plans showing the slightly larger building. The approved and proposed front and side elevations showing the slight changes in fenestration. And again, the approved and proposed rear and side elevations. These photographs show the view towards the site through the access and the view northeast towards where the building would be positioned, and the view towards Orchard House, owned by the applicants. Some views within the site and south of the site, and the view of the driveway for the Apple store, which was approved under a 2018 application, which is to the south of the site. Overall, the amendments to this application are considered to be acceptable, and therefore the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms Staplehurst. Under the Council's Public Participation Scheme, we have received one submission from the applicant. In line with the Public Participation Scheme, I have reviewed the submission and now will read it out, allocating 2 minutes only for the reading of the submission in accordance with the scheme. Submission is from Mr and Mrs Patton, the applicants. Dear members of the committee, we would like to thank the members of the committee for granting the original application for this barn. We have asked to vary the Conditions 2 plans as the original measurements used were taken from the previous owner of the building, which we use for the application. The barn shape and design is identical to that already granted permission, but it is slightly larger. It was suggested that we build it anyway, as probably no one would check, but we didn't think that it was right to do. So we have put in for a variation of the condition as suggested by the officers, and there is a slight alteration to the size. We have asked to remove the Condition 8 as we already have permission for a toilet in the Apple store and don't need another one. We hope that you can support this. Thank you, Mr and Mrs Kenny Patton. Chairman may refer to other officers before finally being moved. Does any officer want to make another comment? No. Recommendation. The planning application 20-00345 FUL, land adjacent Orchard House, Nipswich Chase, Mayland, be approved subject to conditions as detailed in section 8 of the report. If any member wishes to second this motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now.
I'm happy to second that, Chairman. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Right, let's thank you. And I invite members to make any comments on the report. Any comments, members?
Move the recommendation, Chairman.
Okay, we'll move. Do you want to, or do we need to do it individually, Berna?
Well, no member has indicated they wish to speak, and Councillor Stamp has seconded the application. So if you want to go straight to the vote, then that's entirely down to the committee if nobody else has any comments.
No comment.
Chairman, being as I did second it, can I ask one question?
Yes.
I was very interested with the applicant's comment about they were told to build it anyway. I just wanted to know who actually told them to build it anyway, because I was really pleased that they had the decency to bring it back to the council rather than just do as they like. Whether it be a councillor or not is immaterial to me. They should be thanked for actually bringing it back to the council. I'm not one, as members know, normally to approve conditions because I think they were made for a reason. But, you know, this has been explained fully. They've already got a toilet in another building. They don't need a toilet. I can't see any issue with it, Chairman, and thank you for letting me speak.
Right, we'll move to the vote then, please, Berna.
Thank you, Chairman. I will take your names in alphabetical order, and it's 4 against, abstain. So, Councillor Bass.
Sorry, before we do that, we didn't get an answer to Councillor Stamp's question about who told them that they could build it anyway.
As the applicant is not here, we will not know, will we? Until we ask them in private when the meeting's finished. Is that clear?
Fair enough.
Right,
Thank
we'll move
Thank
to the
you,
vote.
Chairman. Councillor Bassinger.
Approve.
Councillor Beale.
Approve.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Channer.
Approve.
Councillor Fluker.
Approve.
Helm. Councillor Helm.
Approve.
Hull.
Approve.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
Approve.
Councillor Stamp.
Approve, Berna.
Thank you. That's 8 for 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Berna. We move now to agenda item 6, planning action 20-00360 FUL, the Bank House, 10 Station Road, Southminster, found on pages 27 to 44. Please note that as a member's update in relation to this application has also been circulated prior to the meeting. Has everyone received that? In a moment, I will call the officers to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succulent. Whatever it is.
Succinct.
First,
succulent, good.
Thank you, Chairman.
Do I go out to the meeting now? Oh.
Yes, Councillor Hull.
Yes, Councillor Hull.
This application seeks to change the use of the site to residential, the demolition of part of the rear wing and a first floor extension to create 5 flats. A previous application at the site has approved 4 flats, and an application before that refused permission for 4 larger flats. I'll speak about these applications in more detail throughout the presentation. As mentioned, this update, which includes the correct site map, the tree consultant response, which states no objections, and also stating the agent has confirmed the applicant is willing to sign a legal agreement in relation to RAMS, which is the second reason for refusal. This is the location plan showing the site. This is the existing site plan and the proposed layout. The amenity space has been shown to the north of the site. This is a private garden area of 20 square metres, which will be used in relation to this 2-bedroom flat, and a communal area here measuring 42 square metres, which would be used for the other 3 1-bedroom flats and 1 2-bedroom flat. 4 flats would be required by the design guide to have a total amenity space of 100 square metres, and therefore the 42 square metres proposed would be a significant shortfall. It is noted that a shortfall was accepted under the previous approved application. However, an additional flat has now been proposed and no more amenity space provided. These are the existing elevations of the building. These are the proposed elevations. showing the first floor extension here and this part to the rear. These are the existing floor plans. Please note that this first floor area, these have been labelled as bedrooms, but the agent has confirmed that whilst it appears they may have been built as bedrooms, internally there are name plaques on each door which appear to show that its last use was as a solicitor's office. Due to the age of the building, there isn't any other planning history to dispute this, and therefore the change of use has been assessed as though the building has an office use. And this is stated in section 3.1.11 of the officer report. So these are the proposed ground floor plan and first floor plan. So this is one of the flats with the upstairs living area. This is the second flat down here. The third flat at first floor level here. Fourth flat at ground floor level here. And they were approved under the previous application. And then this first floor 2-bedroom flat shaded is the additional flat proposed under this application. So this shows the previous approved scheme. So the 5th flat wasn't included under this application. The level of amenity space proposed under this proposed under the approved application and the proposed application has not increased, even though an additional 2-bedroom flat is proposed. So you can see it here, which is the same layout as the current application. This is the previously refused scheme. There was an amenity area here of 64 square metres provided between 3 2-bedroom flats and 1 1-bedroom flat, and this application was refused as there wouldn't have been enough amenity space. Here are some photos showing the front of the building on the site here, and the view to the west, the view to the east, and the view along the access to the rear of the site. The view towards the western boundary of the site and the turning area, the rear of the building here, and the view southwest toward the access. And then the view looking north, and this is where the amenity space would go. Over here, the private amenity space and the communal sort of over here, and then also the parking area would be here as well. Overall, whilst the previous application approved a shortfall in amenity space, a further 2-bedroom flat has now been proposed and no additional amenity space, and therefore the shortfall would be exacerbated, which would harm the living conditions of the future occupiers. Furthermore, in the absence of a signed legal agreement to secure mitigation in relation to RAMs, this would result in the proposal being unacceptable and is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Under the Council Public Participation Scheme, we have received one submission from the applicant. In line with Public Participation Scheme, I have reviewed the submission and will now read it out, allocating 2 minutes only for the reading of the submission in accordance with the scheme. Submission is from Ellis Wiseman, the applicant. This is an opportunity to reinstate an attractive building which will enhance the High Street conservation area and the setting of 2 immediately adjacent listed buildings, namely St Leonard's Church and Helmystone. This application allows the entire building to be completed as one coherent development rather than leave an important section of the building unresolved. While the scheme does not meet the precise square meterage required for amenity space, providing the building with walking distance of the town's playing fields, playgrounds, sports club, countryside footpaths and the town's retail amenities. The Malden District Council immediate requirements would be 25 square metres per apartment. The space available is 111 square metres, thus just an 11% shortfall. I don't understand that. This scheme resolved the refuse and recycling storage provision neatly and securely whilst providing a parking space for each unit. The applicant has a team of builders waiting to commence the project and would hope the committee can see the importance of commencing and completing this additional flat at the same time as the 4 previously approved apartments. Does any other officer want to comment before I move on?
No, Chairman.
All right. The recommendation as set out with the report is as follows. That the planning application, the Bank House 10 Station Road, Southminster, be refused for the reasons as detailed in section 8 of the report. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn off your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. Nobody?
No, Chairman, sorry, I'll second that.
Okay. I now move to invite members to make comments on the report. Berna, who has indicated to speak?
Yeah, Councillor Fluker would like to speak, Chairman.
Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I speak as one of the ward members for Southminster. Chairman, I'd like to direct the members' attention to page 29 of the Morden District Design Guide, and in particular policy C07, which deals with residential outdoor amenity space. And having read that, I'm just a bit confused as to the officer's recommendation, because it says quite clearly that usable outdoor amenity space could be in the form of private communal gardens, balconies, children's play areas, allotments, or public spaces. So, Chairman, for the benefit of those that have never been to Southminster or know this area particularly well, it's directly opposite the entrance to the King George V playing fields, which have got, well, it's just down the road. I can see Brian nodding his head. So it's very, very close to King George V, which has got playground equipment and everything else there. And it also, Chairman, it's very important that with these flatted type accommodations, where we look closely nearby and we look at Cherry Orchard, we look at Tattershaw's, none of them actually meet these design requirements, which I find quite strange, albeit that they were they were built before the LDP was approved. So, and the other thing is, Chairman, it also says under policy C07 that depending on the scale of development and the quality and quantity of existing provisions in the wider area, it may be necessary to incorporate an element of outdoor amenity space. So the actual policy says it may be necessary, Chairman, to include this outdoor community area. It only may be. And to me, Chairman, because you've got the public playing fields nearby, that actually does tend to counter that. So, Chairman, in summary, since the bank closed, this was the old Barclays Bank building. It's been empty for many, many years. A solicitor did operate from one part of it. And through that period of time, Chairman, it has deteriorated enormously. And it's becoming now something of an eyesore, which is in a residential area. And I continue, I do get complaints from neighbours nearby asking what's going to happen to it. I think the last time it came to this committee, it was for a restaurant takeaway, and that was refused. So, Chairman, in summary, this is an opportunity to provide some much needed flatted accommodation for the village. Southminster Parish Council support the application. The Conservation Officer has no objection, and it is in a very nice part of the village. There's no objections from Highways. No letters of objections have been received. And it's a matter of choice, really, for future residents whether or not they want to occupy these properties, knowing that it doesn't have a huge amount of community space. So, Chairman, the lack of amenity space, as described by officers, still meets the criteria of the design guide C07. And that said, Chairman, contrary to the officers' recommendation and subject to a signed 106 agreement with regards to RAMS, I'd propose, Chairman, that we actually approve this. We approve this application. Thank you.
Have we a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Beale. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please. I support. Is my mic on? Sorry.
Yes, it's on.
Yes, I totally support the use of this building for the purpose stated. We've already turned it down as a restaurant, etc., and there aren't many other uses that it can be put to. So I think this is the best option we've got to see this building is used, and so it doesn't fall into disrepair. There is a need for flats in Southminster. We've got Westhouse Estate coming online shortly, and that has certainly shown a lot of interest to local Southminster people to look for flats. So I think that there won't be any problem about the usage of it at the end of the day, but if it's just going to be turned down because of lack of amenity space and there doesn't seem to be other option, I do think that this should be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Beale. Any other members?
Chairman, Councillor Stamp would like to speak.
Okay, Councillor Stamp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for the benefit of any other members that don't know the area well as well as what everybody else seems to, can I have clarification from the officers that the previous planning application was approved, so they've already got planning permission to build flats or convert it to flats? This is only because they want to squeeze an additional one in, Chairman, is that correct?
Can I
come back on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so they have, I'll just put the presentation up again, a bit easier to explain. So they have permission for these 4 flats in this area here and upstairs here. So it's just this shaded area because that this wasn't within the applicant's ownership at the time of the previous application. So all this sort of in white does have permission. It's just this additional flat is now proposed. As has been stated, they haven't increased the level of amenity space.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I just think it's really important that, you know, this is that same fact of dibbing into the LDP, dibbing into what of policies we've got, SPDs, and dibbing out when it suits us. I take on board what Councillor Fluker has just said, but I'm actually erring towards supporting the officer's recommendation on this one. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sorry, Chairman, is it possible to come
Yes.
back on a point? Louise, do you want to come back on the point just about the amenity space, and then if necessary, I'll pick up the point about the design guide and an overarching principle. But if you want, is that okay?
Yes, yeah, that's fine. Through you, Chairman. So in relation to the level of amenity space provided, it is noted what members have said about there being sort of playing fields and it being in a rural area and places where future occupiers could walk, and this may justify a minor shortfall in amenity space provision, but it's not considered that would justify the level that has been provided, so not providing any additional amenity space for the additional flats. So 42 square metres would be provided and 100 square metres would need to be provided according to the design guide, and it's considered that level of shortfall is significant and would harm the future occupiers' quality of living. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank
Lee?
you. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In relation to section 6 C06 that Councillor Fluker referenced in the design guide, that section is in relation to more strategic placemaking, and it also talks about providing sports and community facilities and things like that. It's not a section in relation to specifically in relation to on-site provision for a single development or conversion such as this. As the officer's report explains, and as members have already queried, and as Ms. Staples has just iterated, the development already has permission for flats, and this is an increase of development by providing an additional flat. Officers consider that 2-bedroom flats have the potential to be family accommodation, have children living in them, and that private amenity space or usable amenity space, at least on site, is essential for such developments. The current proposal that has permission does have a less amount of amenity space, also a similar amount of amenity space, but has less properties. And obviously that's a material difference. And as officers, we consider the additional flat, which is a family accommodation, would result in an unacceptable impact on the future occupiers due to amenity space, because it is contrary to policy. And as once again, just like to flag up that Councillor Fluker's reference to CO6 is about open spaces in more placemaking rather than applications such as this. And we have won appeals on similar nature, because generally, if you've got a small child, you wouldn't let it go to a play area away from the site without being watched, being viewed, and therefore it's unlikely to be constant or an active action. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Fluke would like to come back on that.
Okay, Councillor Fluke.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Chairman, I was just flicking between you and the design guide. So I think that Mr. Lee was speaking about, he was talking about policy CO6. I was actually talking about CO7, which talks about residential outdoor amenity. And I've just gone through it again, and I've read it all, and it doesn't say anything about strategic sites on page 29. In fact, it alludes to flatted developments. So I sort of don't quite get that, but you know, normally Mr. Lee is right, but I am reading page 29, and page 29 looks pretty clear to me. It seems to cover all developments, Chair, not just strategic ones. I mean, I'll just flick through to the front page just in case after all these years I've missed something. But no, Chairman, I'm reading the foreword that was written by Councillor Channer, and I can't see where it says that applies only to, this document only applies to strategic sites. So, Chairman, I'd stand by my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fluke. Councillor,
Chairman, can I come back on that?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Fluke, I must have misheard, because I thought you stated CO6 as what you were referencing, which is open spaces and which identifies things such as wider reliance. CO7 is about residential amenity space and has like an adequate amount of amenity space has been provided for each dwelling. The overall size of the garden is in proportion with the type of dwelling and the character of the area. The minimum standards set out in the Essex Design Guide are achieved. For houses of 3-bedroom plus is 100 metres squared per 1 to 2 bed unit. So 1 to 2 bed unit is 15 metres squared, and flats is 25 metres squared. The external access to the rear garden is provided, avoiding long, narrow alleyways. Amenity spaces has not been compromised by the location of the parking areas. So obviously these points weren't the ones you read out earlier, so that's what's just confused me, but I must have got myself wrong. I apologise. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Apologies. Right.
Councillor Fluke would like to come back again.
Yes, of course he can. Councillor Fluke.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. I'm still reading this, and yeah, I mean, Mr. Lee's right. CO7, it does go on to say that make sure that, but that's the Essex Design Guide, and what I'm referring to is the narrative, which is in the Northern District Design Guide, and it says in there quite clearly it may be necessary. So it's not actually fixed in stone. It says it may be necessary to provide these facilities if there aren't any nearby. So I'm still just a little bit confused, but this is a typical subjective comment that we get in these documents, and they're open to interpretation, Chairman. So, you know, there's a proposal on the table which I think's been seconded, and I'd ask that you put the question, Chairman. Thank you.
Right, we've got two proposals on that table. One is to refuse, and one is to go against the officer's recommendation. Berna, which one do I take first?
First one. You take the officer's recommendation first.
Okay, the officer's recommendation is to refuse. Can you take a vote, please, Berna?
Thank you. Sorry, is everybody happy with that I go ahead and take a vote now?
So just for clarity, was it seconded?
Yes, but Councillor Channer.
Councillor Channer seconded the officer's recommendation. Okay, in alphabetical order and state for, against or abstain. Councillor Bassinger for the officer's recommendation of refusal. Councillor Bassinger.
Hello there, I'm against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Beale.
Against.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Fluke.
Against.
Councillor Helm.
Against.
Councillor Hull. Councillor Skeens.
Sorry, abstain.
Councillor Stamp.
I'm for the officer's recommendation, Berna.
Thank you. So,
Chairman,
members,
I haven't been asked.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Channer. It's just I had apologies in there on Councillor Jewett. I missed you. Councillor Channer.
For the officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. So that's 2 for the officer's recommendation, 4 against, and 2 abstentions.
Bernard, do we need to go to the other motion, or do we take?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes, we do.
Right, we'll go to
Thank
the other
you.
motion. Against the officer's recommendation. I would need reasons for approval, please. Councillor Fluker, can you give reasons for approval?
Certainly, Chairman. It accords with policy C07 of the Morton District Design Guide, Chairman. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman. All I would say is that that wasn't what was vocalised by Councillor Fluker earlier, and I don't think it'd be a safe position just to make such a categorical statement. What I would say is that Councillor Fluker earlier vocalised that he considered, due to the close proximity to other open space and other facilities, that it wasn't a detrimental impact, is what I would say was what was debated earlier, rather than that it definitely complies with the policy. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, I'm grateful for Mr. Lee's comment. I was just putting that in summary, really, by applying CO7 and the nearby amenity space. So I'm grateful to Mr. Lee for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Bernard, can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. In alphabetical order again, for, against, abstain, to approve contrary to the officer's recommendation. Councillor Bassinger.
For.
Councillor Beale.
For.
Sorry, Bernard, for clarity, that was to approve subject to the completion of section 106, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and contrary to the Councillor Beale.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Channer.
Abstain.
Councillor Fluker.
For.
Councillor Helm.
For.
Councillor Hull. Sorry. Councillor Skeens.
Abstain.
And Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Members, that's 4 for the recommendation, 1 against, and 3 abstentions. So that's carried.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Bernard. We move on to land rear of 148 Station Road. Yes?
You're muted,
You're
Bernard.
muted, yes.
Oh, apologies. I was just making sure that Councillor Hull was back in the meeting. She is now back in. Thank you very much.
Right, okay, thank you. We move on to now to application 20-0037/5 FUL, land rear of 148 Station Road, Burnham on Crouch, found on pages 45 to 78. Please note that the members' update is in relation to this application has also been circulated prior to the meeting. In a moment, I will call the officer to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make it known using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and concise. Can we have the officer presenting the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Michael Johnson, lead specialist, presenting this application on behalf of the case officer. I'll just share my screen. Thank you, Chairman. This application proposes the change of use from Class B1 and B2 to Class C3. The proposal is a demolition of the existing dilapidated industrial building, and erection of 4 new residential dwelling houses, ancillary development and landscaping. So I will take you through the presentation slides. So here we have the site outlined. We have the Tesco's to the south. We have the properties along Station Road to the west. And then we have Brackwell Close to our east. And here we have the site plan in more detail. The site is 0.2 hectares in site. Just to point out to members here that this is the existing dilapidated industrial building in B1, B2 use class. Here, just a more topographical site. And here we have the proposed site plan. And I'll just, as I'm going through the slides, just point out some of the fundamental difference. From the report, members are aware that the previous scheme comprised 5 dwellings, and that was refused. The reasons for refusal are set out in the report. This scheme proposes to address the reasons for refusal. The scheme has been reduced from 5 units to 4 units. So just pointed out here, we have 2 3-bedroom detached dwellings, and then we have a pair of semis comprising 2 bedrooms. We have the access drive, which is existing to the south of the dwellings. We have a green open space, and then we have the gardens to the north. Some of the fundamental differences, again, was that there was an additional dwelling to the eastern boundary, a detached dwelling, which was included in the reasons for refusal previously, of poor design and also its proximity to the boundary. The other reasons for refusal, again, are set out in the report, was that the development comprised a largely cramped form of development, no space in between the buildings, a large expanse of hard surfaced area, and considered therefore unsuitable. In this case, we can see the clear reasons here in terms of the cramped form of development. Apologies, I just heard a sound. We can see the gaps in between the building to provide the spacings as addressing the previous reasons for refusal. In between those gaps, we have some parking spaces, 2 aligned to the detached dwellings. And then to the front of the pair of semis, we also have 2, and then we also have another 2 on the corresponding side. The scheme there provides 8 parking spaces. Okay, so moving through, again, we have the proposed drainage strategy. This slide has been included because lack of a sufficient drainage strategy was part of the reason for refusal on the previous scheme. So this sets out the particular areas of the drainage scheme which members might find useful. The sort of crosshatch type area is the permeable paving. We also have the storage areas here in red, and the various other lines comprise the existing combined sewer, new foul sewer, new foul rising main, existing surface water sewer, surface water rising main. And the arrow along the access drives just shows the topography of the site, which leads downwards towards the road, showing the direction of any surface water flow. These are the existing elevations of the existing B1, B2 building, single-story development in the northwest corner, as seen on the location plan. And here we have the detailed elevations and plans of the proposed detached dwellings. Again, just to point out here that these dwellings have been changed in design to create a form which is more condensed. It's got hip roofs to the front, therefore compacting the development and decreasing its overall masses compared to the previous scheme. The layout, we can see there, 3 bedrooms on the first floor, living room, kitchen, diner on the ground floor. This slide shows the pair of semis, 2-bedroom dwellings, again, 2 bedrooms on the first floor, living diner arrangement on the ground floor. To the right here, we can see the cycle stores. All the units are provided with secured and covered cycle stores within their curtilage. So here you have a proposed street scene. The proposed street scene, as can see from the bottom, is a cross section taken through the site, where the site adjoins a boundary with the Tesco store. So we can see the development there. Members can probably also see the dotted line indicating the scale of the previous schemes, which was in the form of two pairs of semi and the single detached building, which was plot 5, adjacent to the Brackwall Road development. We can see the slight topographical gradient leading down towards Station Road. And again, this is just showing the previously refused scheme, seeing the sort of dense nature of the development, restricted gaps through a smaller open space area to the south, the extent of hard standing, and also the sufficient details of the drainage strategy was not produced with this particular scheme. And again, just showing it in elevation, so we can see the design form. Again, less compact, more square and sort of blockular. Again, impacting on the overall spaciousness compared to the current scheme. And also we can see in relationship to the scale of the existing dwellings on the site. Now they've taken through the photographs, access to the site, Brickwall Close over to the east. The third slide, that's showing a view sort of northwest. We can see part of the Tesco's car park there and the flank elevation of 148. Fourth picture, the Tesco store, its relationship with the boundary. On here, there's a series of photographs panning around the site. So we can see its nature. The second to the top, you can see the rear of Tesco's. Bottom left-hand corner, we can see the existing commercial building, and to the right of 2 angles. Again, just panning around the site. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, we can see a view from within the site looking towards Station Road. Again, we can see the part side and flank of number 148 Station Road. And on the other side, we can see the corresponding elevation toward Brackwall Close. Again, just to give members a feel, view to the various boundaries. Thank you. So
thank you very much.
I'll just, sorry, members, just fiddling around with the technologies. It might be useful if I probably just actually leave the location plan on the screen just for your, just go back to that one. That's probably, the site plan is probably quite useful for yourselves. So as per the officer's recommendation, this scheme is recommended for approval. His officer's view that the scheme addresses the reasons for refusal. The members' update shows that outstanding matters, particularly in terms of the unilateral undertaking, has been assigned by the applicant. Essex Highways have no objections to the scheme, subject to conditions. And as such, the scheme is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Under the Council's public participation scheme, we have received 2 submissions, one from objector and one from the applicant. In line with the public participation scheme, I've reviewed the submission and will now read out, allocating 2 minutes only for a reading of the submission and each submission according with the scheme. Submission 1 from David Housen, objector. Brief response: I live at 3 Brickwall Close, not Brickwall Crescent. Notwithstanding my and other affected residents' previous objection to the development, but I point out that the tree designated T2 is on land not, as I understand it, owned by the developer. Plot 3 has been designated a 2-bedroom property, but it remains the same dimensions as a 3-bedroom. In order to ensure that the 50-50 mix plot 3 dimensions should mirror those of plot 4. This is the undertaking when the resulting reduction in width of 1 metre of the combined plot 3 and 4 could be applied to the eastern boundary, giving sufficient space to plant suitable height screening trees. This would give appropriate privacy to my garden, seating and entertaining area. It goes without saying that suitable fencing and soft screening should be applied to the entire site boundaries. Submission 2, this is from Chris Ragg, the applicant. Good afternoon. This application for 4 new homes is our third application on this site, having previously brought forward a scheme of 10 flats and a scheme of 5 dwelling houses. I felt it necessary to say that at every stage of this process, our client has listened to the comments and concerns raised by the neighbours, the town council, the planning department and the committee members. At every stage, our client has acted positively and amended the application proposal so that a sensitive design approach could be reached. I believe that most parties have concluded that the current industrial use classes is inappropriate on the site and not in keeping with the prominently residential character. The committee deemed the previous application for 5 units as too much for the site and that a modest scheme for 4 dwellings would relate more appropriately with the area and in principle be acceptable. This is an option that was backed by the planning department during our pre-application advice meeting. All advice that was received during the pre-app meeting was taken on board during the design process. During the course of this application, we have continued to respond in a way to the comments that have been received. This includes reducing the dwelling sizes that were proposed originally 3 times 3 bedroom and 1 times 2 bedroom to now provide a fair balance of mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. The planning officer has been very professional and proactive in ensuring that a sensitive design is achieved. Having read through the committee reports, you can see that the overriding issues brought forward during the course of this application and that the previous refusal have been taken on board, leaving us with the support of the planning department. Our client has invested a lot of hard work and a lot of money into this application. We have been fair and professional in our approach, and we hope the committee can agree with the planning officer's recommendation. Thank you for listening. Chairman, would there any officers like to say anything before I move to the recommendation?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, the recommendation, the planning application 20/00375-full land rear of 148 Station Road, Burnham, be approved subject to the signing of a unilateral undertaking to confirm that developer will contribute to Essex Coastal Recreational Disturbance Avoidance and Mitigation Strategy, RAMS, and conditions as detailed in section 8 of the report and the members' update. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll second your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Berner, who has indicated to speak?
Councillor Skeens and then Councillor Stamp.
Okay, Councillor Skeens, please.
Yes, hello. Three things to say, really. Mr. Johnson, would you be so kind as to put up the site plan again? I just want to show the shape of the road, if I may. Now, all of you who are familiar with driving into Burnham, and I'm sure there's a fair few of you here, will know that as you come down the road that passes the library, which is just to the top left of this picture, you are faced with a blind bend, which can cause and has caused certainly alarm. I'm not sure of any accidents yet, so that's fair enough, because there is the Tesco's entrance there. And that Tesco's entrance is very busy. And of course, there is also the Remembrance Avenue entrance, which is in the bottom left of the of the picture. And then there's this new proposed busy entrance on a blind bend just beyond the apex. Now, I know that highways don't think this is a problem, but then highways don't live here. And I can tell you that that is going to be a problem with cars coming in and out immediately after a blind bend with a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, which is sometimes, frankly, exceeded. And I think that's a major issue and a reason for not having so many houses there. Secondly, I would say the roof heights. Mr. Johnson, if you could just quickly show that picture in which you were showing the corresponding roof heights, that would be useful. Thank you. It's a street scene, really. That's the one. That one, back one. Thank you. Now, to me, those are big. Bigger than the surrounding buildings. You have to go some way to the left of that picture to see something of a corresponding height. As far as I can see, I have problems with how large they are. And thirdly, and this we've said so many times, and I do not understand why it doesn't carry more weight, Burnham on Crouch is far beyond the allocation of houses that was agreed in the neighbourhood plan. Now, I understand that Mr. Lee will say, yes, but that was just a minimum. That is not how it was read by the Burnham electorate, who voted for a massive majority in favour of the neighbourhood plan in the referendum. And indeed, even so, we've exceeded it by so much that it's becoming ridiculous. We just simply cannot take more houses in Burnham at this time. Thank you.
Anybody else, Myrna?
Councillor Stamp has asked to speak.
Stamp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I put something in the message bar. Can we just have an update of the number of approved planning applications, including the strategic sites, which is normally referred to as the 5-year land supply? Well, the information is provided in the 5-year land supply because I haven't had the updated version. Can I have that before I speak, Chairman, please?
Through you, Chairman, officers don't have that information to hand.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I appreciate that. So yet again, we're expected to approve a planning application recommended by the officers based on no evidence of the number of houses that have already been approved in Burnham. I'll say what I normally say, Mr. Chairman. There is a waiting list for all the schools. People who are moving and buying the properties in Burnham now are having to have their children bussed out to Southminster, Plume School, Southwood and Ferrers. These are family houses you're building there. I really wouldn't have an issue, Chairman, if they were, bungalows for people maybe with mobility issues, because it's right in the centre of the town. You've got a Tesco there, you've got beautiful facilities. The family homes that we're getting on all the surrounding areas, outside areas of Burnham, is massive. I can't remember the last count when I actually did a house count on the number of applications, so please forgive me, but I know what Councillor Skeens has said, it's over and above. If members are minded to approve this, there's a couple of things I want to say. Is thank you, officers, for recognising condition 10 about the Japanese knotweed. It is an issue. I'd be very appreciative if that is dealt with properly. The objector said quite clearly, is there a possibility that he could have some trees planted that will help protect his privacy along the side? I think that's not too much to ask. I totally agree with Councillor Skeens. That road is absolutely a nightmare, that turning. I know somebody who lives opposite, and when I try and, to even drop them off, you're taking your life into your own hands down there. And these additional houses are going to produce what? How many cars? At least 4, 5, 6 cars. It's just too much. And Councillor Skeens is speaking a great deal of sense to me. Whether the officers turn around and say, for planning reasons, we cannot refuse this. We do live here. And also, can I say it's a shame that Tesco's hasn't looked at expanding and buying this bit of land, because the actual chaos, their lorries, and they do stack down Remembrance Avenue when they're trying to get 2 or 3 of those great big Arctics in to deliver to their site. Now, I know you all say they're not planning reasons, but this is actually what affects us here. So while you continuously keep developing planning applications with more houses above what we actually do need, you need to actually be taking that into account as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Chairman, Councillor Fluker would like to come back on a point of clarity.
Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's with regards to the slide that's actually on the screen at the moment. There's some lines and there's a narrative, but I can't read the narrative. And I just wondered perhaps if Mr. Johnson could just tell us what these lines are and the broken lines and what they actually refer to. It looks to me it might be something to do with the previous application where you had quite a large house in the middle with a chimney. But what's the bit behind it, Mr. Johnson? Could you just explain what that is?
If I can try and just zoom in on that. Just bear with me a second, please. Right, the top one is the approximate ridge height of sorry, Councillor Fluke, I'll probably have to get back to you. It's slightly distorted from what I can look at. So if I could come back to you on that annotation.
Well, Chairman, through you, I think it's quite important because we're trying to understand how this fits within the context of the other properties. My impression is one of the lines shows you the height of the house nearby, and it fits below that. But I was just curious, Chairman, what these other narratives were. I guess one is to do with the chimneys of the previous application, which is slightly higher than where. Yeah, that's the bit. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is approximate ridge level of
previous application.
No, buildings. It's even difficult for me to. Right. Approximate ridge level of buildings along
something road.
Yes, I think it's probably it's the dwelling to the north. Yes,
yeah,
that's right. And then the lower one is ridge line of
Brickwall Close.
Chalet bungalow.
Chalet bungalow along, on Brickwall Close. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Anybody else to speak?
Well, I'd just add that Western Road is not really relevant to this, except that on the far left, the tall house shows a ridgeline that I don't even know if is on Western Road, but I suppose it could be. The point is that these are big. That's my point, anyway.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak?
Not at the moment, Chairman.
We have an officer's recommendation to approve, which is
sorry, Chair.
Sorry, Chairman.
I just wanted to know if there was an opportunity to come back on a couple of points.
Yes.
Sorry, first of all, if Councillor Fluker ask the officers a question and then
yes, of course can.
We could round off.
Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask a question at this stage that if members were minded to approve this, is it possible that we could include some kind of screening? Because I think we've all had some correspondence from nearby neighbours about overlooking, although the report does say that there is no overlooking. I just wondered if that would be possible. And I certainly wouldn't. Yeah, OK, I'll park it there.
Can we have a comment on Councillor Fluker's proposal?
Sorry, that the council.
Yes, I just wanted to come back on a couple of points, which probably could include that. Just in terms of highway safety and the issues of the blind bend and vehicles ingressing and egressing, I'll just point out that highway safety was not a reason for refusal on the previous schemes. It would be, sorry?
We know.
Yes.
Because they don't listen to us. Sorry to interrupt.
Right. Yeah, the difficulty obviously that we have there is that to introduce a new reason for refusal on a scheme which is, notwithstanding the numbers and elements of layout, is not dissimilar from the previous refused scheme, could put the council into a difficult position and probably open us to costs. On the second reason for a height issue was raised, height of the buildings. Again, that was sort of just discussed. What I would point out is that, again, just going back to the street scene, there is, well, strictly speaking, the building isn't higher than the previous scheme, but it's a much more compact and open scheme, as we can see. It's got a less form and scale of development. There are significant gaps through the design. So to then sustain under the ambit of a previous reason for refusal that the scheme is higher when all the other matters would be addressed would be a difficult one for the council to sustain, in my opinion. Point 3, again, I think this was raised by one of the councillors about the nature of the development. I would again just point out the previous inspector accepted the principle of housing development on this site. This is a brownfield site. It does comply with the NPPF in that respect. So again, that would be very difficult. And this sort of ties in also with Councillor Stamp's point. It would be very difficult to sustain a reason for refusal on the basis that there are additional dwellings proposed to the area through this scheme. Thank you, Chairman. Oh, sorry, the last point I'll just point out again is regarding the trees. I think we should have a look at the layout. If we can see the, sorry, that's the previous scheme. Just go back the other way. If we can see the layout, there would be some difficulty in proposing any tree screening to the western side. We can see it's only about 1.4 distance to the boundary there, and similarly even to the eastern side, the area there wouldn't be sufficient for trees to provide the screening of the building as may be considered by members. I would just point out that there are no windows in the flank elevation, so in terms of overlooking, there is no overlooking from this scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to say anything before I move to the recommendation?
Chairman, Councillor Skeens would like to put forward a second proposal, and Councillor Stamp has a question.
Okay, Councillor Skeens.
Yes, I'd like to propose that this development is rejected. I appreciate Mr. Johnson's comments, but equally, I think we, you know, if it comes to appeal, if we have a decent lawyer, we could probably get this through. I know it's a risk, but we are miles over our allocation. This is on a dangerous blind bend, and the roof heights are an issue. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second you, Councillor Skeens.
Okay, what did you want to say, Councillor Stamp?
Thank you. Just a bit of clarity from Mr. Lee, one of my normal points. The previous officer speaking, which I don't know very well, the new gentleman, Michael, said about the application, because of previous applications, the highways wasn't an issue and it wasn't debated or whatever, it wasn't a reason for refusal. Mr. Lee always tells me that you have to take each planning application in its own right. Is that right, Mr. Lee, or does that not apply now because we've got planning history that's been refused? It's just a point of clarity.
Yep.
And before
Chairman.
hang on, Mr. Lee.
Sorry.
Hang on. And I also like to second what Councillor Fluker said, that surely on the eastern side, some trees can go down there to actually help. You can get trees that are tall and skinny with a high bushy top that can actually give the privacy from the objector who actually is going to be affected by this development. So thank you, Councillor Fluker. It can be put as a condition. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Planning law is clear that an application must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and each application must be determined on its own merit, but a material consideration is planning history of a site. Something that should be given greater weight is the material consideration when it's been to appeal. And as Mr. Johnson highlighted, an application for 10 units has previously been dismissed at appeal, but at this time, neither the principal or highway safety matters such as that were considered to be an issue. it would be dangerous for an authority to try and introduce these. Again, as highways was looked at partly at last time. So to try and revisit issues when inspector has found them to be acceptable, either as a principal point or actually where the highway movement is likely to be less in this instance than it would have been at 10, would be a very dangerous road to take, I would say, for members and for the council. Just in relation to the point about screening on the eastern side, personally, while there may be some harm to the applicant in their opinion, or to the neighbour in their opinion, I do not consider, and the officers don't, local planning authority, that it's such a degree that it is, is a demonstrable and real harm. And such condition, I don't think would meet the tests in my advice to members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now move to the recommendation of approval, seconded by Councillor Fluker. Bernard, could you take a vote, please?
Okay, so this is for the officer's recommendation of approval.
That's correct.
So if you can indicate for, against or abstain. Councillor Bassinger.
Abstain.
Councillor Beale.
For.
Councillor Boyce.
For.
Councillor Channer.
For.
Councillor Fluker.
For.
Councillor Helm.
For.
Councillor Hull.
For.
Councillor Skeens.
Against.
Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Thank you, members.
I think that's carried. We don't need to go to the other proposal, do we?
6 for, 2 against, 1 abstention.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's duly carried. We move on to item 8. 20-00415, house 17 Brook Road, Tillingham, Essex. Found on pages 79 to 88. In a moment, I'll call on officers to print this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known while using the chat function within this meeting. I will then, I think this is great, I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succulent, whatever it is. Give up on that. Ms. Keane, please could you present the report?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Planning permission is sought for the construction of a first floor side extension over an existing side projection. This is the location plan showing the location of the site. This is the proposed block plan. It's the existing ground floor plan. The existing first floor plan. The existing second floor plan. This is the proposed ground floor plan. Proposed first floor plan. Proposed second floor plan. These are the existing elevations and the proposed elevations. Existing and proposed roof plans. This application is a resubmission of previously refused applications 19-00256 House and 19-00705 House. As can be seen from the elevation plans of these previous applications, the proposed design has changed minimally between these two previous applications and the application before us. The current application is therefore recommended for refusal. And these are photographs of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have one submission from Mrs. Krista Collins, the applicant. Dear Sir, we write to you regarding the ongoing planning application to extend our home. The reason behind our application is to make the house grow with our family so we can become a long-term family home. During the COVID-19 lockdown, we have worked in our garden to plant and develop bamboo shoots to help provide additional privacy for us and our neighbours number 2 and number 4, St Nicholas Road. The bamboo is planted from the alleyway leading to and from our front garden to the rear garden and runs along the boundary edge of our property to the far end of the garden. In response to your reasons for refusal, we feel that the planned changes to our house would not create a bigger structure than the house opposite us, which has been under construction for the past year and a half. Another third of the property has been added in width, and a loft room rather than a loft space has been built. We have also been told by our neighbours that number 19 Brook Road, that they have previously had a planning application granted to knock down a single-storey extension and build another house in its place. If this was to go ahead, we would become a row of 3 houses and the bulk would become the same as what we are hoping to build. We understand that this planning application has now expired and we are concerned that they may have permission to grant it in the future. Regards, Mr. and Mrs. Collins. Right, officers, would you like to say anything before I move to the recommendation?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, the recommendation that this planning application 20-004-15/House 17 Brook Road, Tillingham, Essex, be refused for the reasons detailed in section 8 of this report. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. Right, is there any speakers, please?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Fluker would like to speak.
Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so what we're dealing here, Chairman, is a young family. They're a local family, and they are an expanding a family, and they basically run out of space, Chairman, in their house. It's quite interesting, Chairman. If the members turn to page 90 of the LDP, and in particular policy 5.28, it says alterations, extensions or additions are important ways for existing building stock to adapt to the changing needs of a household. And it goes on from there. So what they actually want to do, Chairman, accords with policy 5.28. So that then leaves us with the old conundrum of policy D1. What does it look like? Now, this is a very wide plot. I know this plot well. It's a very wide plot, Chairman. My view is that the design is fine for the location, and that the principle of development accords with the LDP. And Chairman, we've had similar applications like this in Orchard Road, Southminster, where you've got semi-detached houses and people have built over their garages and everything else. And I know that every single application has to be dealt on its own merits, but I do think, Chairman, that policy 5.28 certainly allows for this to happen. So really, Chairman, it's a case of what does it look like? And there are no objections, I don't think, Chairman, from neighbours, which is very, very important. And I note the comment from Tillingham Parish Council, and I know that the location is well known because I think the clerk may live along there somewhere. But at the end of the day, Chairman, in my mind, this does look okay, and therefore it does accord with policy D1. And I propose, Chairman, that contrary to the officer's recommendation, we approve this. And I know it's not a planning condition, but if we do approve it, Chairman, and we do say that it accords with policy D1, it allows for a young family to stay in the village, and that's the future of the village, Chairman. Thank you.
Have a seconder, please. Have we a seconder at all?
I'll second Councillor Fluker. Councillor Stamp, we have to support local people in our communities, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor
Can
Stamp.
I come back, Chairman, on that point?
Yes, you can.
Two things, or to start with two things. Firstly, Councillor Fluke has highlighted paragraph 5.2.8 of the LDP, and he read out the first line. That paragraph, and I'll read out the second line, a well-designed extension to the, sorry, it's on a bend, I'll read that again. A well-designed extension development can complement and even enhance an existing property and its surrounding whereas a poorly designed scheme can have a significant detrimental impact on the original character of the street scene. Basically, what that policy is saying, or that point is saying, is that as a principle, there is no objection to extending dwellings, and it comes down to design. That is what that officer's report says. It clearly explains that we don't have a principle against extending the dwelling. So I think that paragraph read in its entirety is a moot point and offers very little to the termination of this application. All I would say is that planning legislation is quite clear that personal circumstances of an applicant should only be taken into consideration if they are very special. The consideration of somebody needing larger space to accommodate their family would not be very special circumstances, and hoping or aspiring to retain existing families within the village is also something that should not really be a material consideration above and beyond a policy allocation of increasing properties. And such an approach has been found to be unlawful. So I'd be very conscious of members giving any real weight to that as the determination of this application. The objection is from the officers relates to design. It turns out it isn't a subjective matter, which is obviously something we often discuss. And my advice for members would be to look at this application as a simple matter of, does the development accord with the council's adopted policies in relation to design? Does the proposed development have a detrimental impact on the design? The various points that Councillor Fluke has raised, I think, should not really be given any demonstrable weight in the termination of this application, as it wouldn't accord with planning law. Thank you, Chairman.
Any members wish to speak?
Chairman, Councillor Fluke would like to come back.
Radio.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lee. I mean, I was just trying to put some meat on the bones of, the principles of the application. I know they're not planning reasons, but I mean, Mr. Lee speaks to design, and if I could just direct members to paragraph 7.2. I mean, this is either in or just adjacent to the conservation area of Tillingham, which is a very important area, and the conservation officer has no problems with the design impacting on the conservation area or otherwise. So, Chairman, I really am confused, and I think from a subjective point of view, and it is very subjective, this we know, I think it works, and I've not heard anything that's changed my mind, Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak?
No, Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. I just wanted to following on from my colleague, Mr. Lee, if the presentation can show the site plan, additional concern which would support the reason for refusal in terms of the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area is the proximity of the extension to the boundary with the adjoining property to its east. It would present a significant and a fairly monolithic flank elevation, barely a metre or so from the boundary. And while not explicitly within the reasons for refusal, is part of the concern officers has raised in terms of the impacts on its overall character. The extension, it would effectively double the size practically of the building. This is the third application. Previous schemes were refused for more or less the same reason. The amendments to this scheme were not considered material. And again, as Mr. Lee pointed out, we support side extensions where appropriate and proportionate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we move to the proposal made by Councillor Fluker, contrary to the officer's recommendation, to approve this application, seconded by Councillor Stamp. Could you do the count, please?
Thank you. I will call members in alphabetical order. For, against, abstain. Councillor Bassinger.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of confused about what we're actually voting on here now. Is it to approve?
To approve.
To approve, contrary to the officer's recommendation.
I approve, sorry. Yes, I approve.
Councillor Beale.
For.
Councillor Boyce.
For approve.
Abstain.
Councillor Chan has left the meeting, members. Councillor Fluker,
Approve.
Councillor Helm,
Approve.
Councillor Hull,
Approve.
Councillor Skeens,
Approve.
Councillor Stamp.
For Burner.
Lovely, thank you. That's 7 for, Chairman, 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. That's duly carried to approve. Can I have reasons for approval, please? Mr. Fluker, Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, that we feel as though it does accord with policy D1 and that the design scale and bulk is acceptable for its location. Thank you.
Exactly.
Very much. We now move to item 9.
Chairman, for your conditions,
Yes.
I'd suggest that the conditions are in relation to time, plans, materials. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Sorry, can we call up the? Obviously, I haven't got the plans in front of me. Normally, we'd have them on the screen. Just sort of thrown me. I don't know if the officer or Michael Johnson have got any suggested conditions either. Sorry.
I would, in addition to what Mr. Lee has suggested, I would also, given the proximity of the flank wall to the boundary to the property to the east, that any openings in the flank elevation be the subject of any future planning applications. Now, although, for example, an opening could be put at first floor level, but would have to be obscured, we wouldn't want the perception of overlooking. So any openings would be therefore controlled. So permitted development rights to be removed in that respect.
Everybody happy with that?
Agreed.
Okay, right. We'll move on to planning application 20-00502 house and 20-00503 LBC, the Wheat Barn, Keelings Road, Dengie, found on pages 89 to 98. In a moment, I will call on the officer to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to chat on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and precise. Have we got Miss Keane to represent it? Yes, we have.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chairman, has Councillor Fluker left?
Yes.
Yes, he has. Thank you.
Householder and listed building consent is sought for the construction of a lean-to storage building for the storage of logs, household and garden equipment. I have a verbal update as a letter of support has been received for this application, commenting on the development being an asset to the dwelling and in keeping with the surrounding area. Okay, this is the location plan, the block plan, the existing floor plan, the proposed floor plan, the existing elevations, proposed elevations, and photos of the site. Thank you, Chair. Oh, this application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Under the Council's public participation scheme, we have received 2 submissions, one from the objector and one from the agent. In line with public participation scheme, I have reviewed the submissions and will now read them out, allocating 2 minutes only for the reading of each submission in accordance with the scheme. Submission 1 is from Andrew Snowden, objector. In addition to the comments submitted objecting to the application, I would like to stress that the roof material proposed is a modern material, totally out of keeping with all other buildings on the site. Further, it is very clear from publicly available satellite imagery and within the boundary of the property. Previous plans state that the distance from the existing building to the boundary as 3.1. Proposed building is 2.9 metres plus 1 to the boundary. This would effectively put the new building on top of the PROW number 10, which It should be noted the applicant has blocked for many months, long before COVID-19. This has been reported to and acknowledged by Essex County County Council. The application has sought to move the boundary to the domestic property outwards into agricultural land without proper process. This application should be given their status is very well aware of the planning process. I strongly oppose the application. Submission 2 from T.C. Matthews, TMA Chartered Surveyor, the agent. 20-00502 House and 20-00503 LBC. Proposed lean-to storage building at Wheatshift Barn. The application is for a modest lean-to style storage building attached to existing cart lodge for the storage of logs and other household and garden equipment for the 2 dwellings on the site. The wheat barn and annex, the simple storage building will be constructed along the rear wall of the existing cart lodge using an existing repaired concrete slab which has been in place along with the rear wall for many years. An original doorway at the cart lodge will be reopened to provide access. The attached photographs demonstrate that the concrete slab and the doorway have been in place since the property was purchased, and not that the access doorway is not recent. The materials proposed have been carefully selected to be in keeping with the other buildings on the site, and the conservation area officer in his response has confirmed that the selected materials are entirely appropriate to the location. Where we got here? Hang on a minute. Has confirmed that the result is a modest and sympathetic additional proposed 2.9 wide building will be wholly within the existing residential curtilage as shown in appropriate documents. The building is not encroached onto the applicant's agricultural field but will lie wholly within the existing residential curtilage. The application is supported by the Parish Council, Conservation Area and its officer's recommendation of approval. Since its scale and design does not harm the appearance and character of the area or the listed building, we therefore ask that the committee follow the recommendation of its officers and approve these applications. Does any officer want to say anything before I move the recommendation?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The recommendation is that planning application 20-00502 House, the Wheat Barn, Keeling Road, Dengie, Essex, be approved, sub the conditions, and that application 20-00503 LBC for listed building consent be granted, subject to conditions as detailed in section 8 of the report. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. Thank you. Any member?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Members, who would like to speak first?
Councillor Stamp would like to speak, Chairman.
Yes, Stamp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of little points. Just looking at the history of the planning applications that have been approved, how many garden stores does one person need? Because if you look at the history, I think he's got about 3 up there. So I've got a huge garden, but it's just a point of accuracy. And about the PROW, is it blocked? Is this anything to do with this application? Can Mr. Lee help? Because it's really important we help support public rights of ways for people to be able to get access to our beautiful countryside. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Lee.
I'll pass you over to the officer on the public right of way issue, as it's specific to the application. In relation to how many garden buildings does someone need to sense, and that's obviously a personal permission. What the need is to see is whether there's a level of harm from it. The application has been made, so it's not trying to be argued that it's permitted development that's incidental. So this becomes a consideration. If you consider that there's a proliferation of outbuildings that detract from the character of the area, then that would be an issue. But there is no policy that would go against the principle of having multiple outbuildings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
So Can I just add to that? Just looking at the history, and while I've not had the benefit of going into the file itself, again, we can see that we have a number of full applications and listed building applications. Some of them appear quite similar, so we may actually be sometimes dealing with the same buildings. So it's not obvious in a case like this that it means that there are X number of buildings being proposed. But we could look upon the site history, and if members feel we can come back on that. But it's not a foregone conclusion that necessarily means that there are, several store buildings within the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr.
What's
Lee.
PRO. PRO.
PRO, please.
Yes, the prow runs adjacent to the red line boundary shown on the location plan and the block plan. So it would appear that the development wouldn't impact on the prow. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, is it correct that you can fill up 50% of your garden with buildings if you so wish?
Not really, no. You can have, one of the triggers for being permitted development is 50% of the garden. It can't go over that. But it's a multi-layered assessment. But that is one of them. But you wouldn't be able to automatically just do 50. But that is one of the considerations. Yes, thank you, Chair.
And that has to be 5 metres apart.
That's old school, not under the current PD, no.
Okay. Right, anybody else, please?
There are no other members wishing to speak, Chairman.
Right, we move to the recommendation. Have we got a seconder on the recommendation, or just move to it?
We've got a seconder, Councillor Boyce seconded.
That's right, yes, right. For that planning application 20-00502 House, the Wheat Barn, Keeling Road, Dengie, be approved. Subject conditions are detailed in section 8 of the report. And that application 20-00503 LBC for listing building consent be granted. Subject conditions as detailed in section 8 of the report. Berna, can you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I will call everybody in alphabetical order. For, against, abstain. Councillor Bassinger.
Approve.
Councillor Beale.
Approve.
Councillor Boyce.
For.
Councillor Helm.
For.
Councillor Hall. Councillor Hall.
For.
Thank you.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
For.
Councillor Stamp. For. Thank you, members. That's 7 for, no abstentions, none against. Carried.
Thank you very much, Berna. We move to agenda item 10, tree preservation order 20-00463 WTPO, land north west of River Lee, Nipswell Chase, Mayland, Essex, found on pages 99 to 104. In a moment, I'll ask the officer to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within the meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and whatever it is. Ms. Keane.
Chairman, can you just pause for a second while I call Councillor Fluker back in?
Oh, yes, no problem.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm in, Bernard. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
you're back in. Sorry, Councillor Fluke. Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
Right.
That bit wasn't right. Thank you, Chairman.
We move to item 10, Tree Preservation Order 20-00463, WTPO land northwest of Riverlea, Nipswich Chase Mayland, found on pages 99 to 104. In a moment, I will call the officer to present this item. Members are reminded, if you wish to speak on this item, please make it known using the chat function within the meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succulent. Ms Keane, please do the report, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Permission is sought for the removal of a section of Prunus spinosa from the woodland, measuring 3.5 metres in length and 1 metre in width. The trees are subject to the Woodland Preservation Order TPO 418. This location plan, showing the area in which the trees would be removed from. This shows the proposed works, which would allow for a path to be created. And these are pictures of the trees to be removed from the woodland. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I move to the recommendation for approval. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now, please. Any members?
Yeah, Councillor Fluke, I'll support the recommendation.
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, that's duly seconded. I'll now invite members to make any comments on this report, please. Bernard, can you indicate who wants to speak?
We've nobody wishing to speak on this one. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. We'll move straight to the recommendation. Bernard, can you take the count, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So again, it's 4 against, abstain. Councillor Bassinger.
4.
Councillor Beale.
Hello.
Councillor Beale.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
4.
Councillor Fluker.
4.
Councillor Helm.
4.
Councillor Hull. Councillor Hull.
I've just me. It's 4.
Yeah. Is that 4? Thank you very much, Councillor Hull.
Yeah.
Councillor Skeetons.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
4.
So that's 8-4, none against, no abstentions. That's carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Move now any items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. There are none.
Sorry, Councillor Helm, Chairman, can I step in a second? I've just realised that members looked to approve the flats at Southminster, there was no conditions imposed recommended, and at the moment, and if we left it, I think just in reality, officers would be bringing it back next committee with a set of suggested conditions. So just wondering if members were happy to revisit that at this moment and to delegate the conditions to officers.
And the chairman?
Yeah, and through consultation with yourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, bear in mind I made the proposal on this. Yeah, bearing in mind the muddle that we got in elsewhere with the public house in Malden, I think, Chairman, that would be very wise.
And obviously the section 106.
Chairman, during those deliberations, can you please ensure that you consult with the conservation officer to make sure that he's happy with materials? Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Everyone else happy?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, right. Any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent? There are none. Closure of the meeting. Members, thank you for your contribution this afternoon. Thank you, officers. And thank you to Bernard for organising all this and getting it all smoothly run through with no interruptions, no problems. And I close the meeting at 14:49. Thank you all.